You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
Hello. 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 Good morning.
And good morning. You can see why I wear the glasses in the morning. Because I don't normally wear glasses for those. I think I might have said this once before. But reading all this stuff around. So these are my official reading glasses, unfortunately. And as I said, or as the computer said, it's the morning show with yours truly, Tony Caravan. Good morning.
Good morning.
And
good morning, Vietnam.
I don't think we've got anybody listening from there right now, but if so, you are more than welcome. The today's show, the title was Dystopia or Utopia. And, we'll get into that. And I've got the help of some flashcards I made this morning. I'm running a little bit later than usual. It's 6:12 a.m. in the former United States of America, in the mid-Atlantic states, on the eastern side of the continent of America. And I'm your host, Tony Caravan. And we're going to get into this thing. Like I said, I don't watch TV anymore. So I glance at YouTube is my TV. And so I'll glance at the recommended, row. And then below it, sometimes there's a, latest news row and recently updated and all that kind of stuff. I'm in slight pain. My left foot, I was climbing a ladder, just a step ladder. And, the rungs on the ladder, I guess, I wish they should have been about so wide, but they were only about this wide. And, I'm just wearing these cheapo, I could probably pull one up. They're on my foot. I don't want to take it off. I put an ace bandage on my foot. But I was just wearing these goofy, flimsy house type sneakers instead of, a sturdier thing. And I guess I must have damaged some. That's happened to me before. And it always is when I'm on some kind of step ladder. I should know better. If I'm going to go on a ladder, I got to wear a better shoe. That's Tony Caravan in the morning telling you the state of affairs. And I'm also pouring some caffeine, cold caffeine, today once again. I'm finishing off this 2-liter bottle I bought for 88 cents of Thunder Cola, Diet Thunder Cola, or something ridiculous like that. And at Walmart, I had a chance to go shopping at Walmart last week. Filled an entire cart. I mean, what a joyous experience. I'm looking sideways down here at my weather app, and the temperature here is 41 degrees, which means the overnight it dipped down to 39, which good thing I covered my plants with some burlap and what's called a cold frame. And a cold frame, the way I've done it and what other people have done, if you have old storm windows or any kind of, window type of thing, and you have a raised bed, if you understand what a raised bed garden is, and I always reach back to my books. So one of these books, of course, the one that is not here, well, this one has one in black and white, but one of my books actually had it on the back cover, which in color, which would have been nice for you to see. Well, anyway, if you have a raised bed, and a raised bed just means you square off with some 2x6s, 2x8s, 2x12s would be ideal, actually. You square off a place and you plant in there. And I'm using these visual things instead of it on the screen because it's a limitation of YouTube. But I think might be bright enough to get that. I mean, it's a whole conflagration, this thing here, of just, these are things growing. And there's a wooden frame around here. You see that? Especially if you watch on YouTube like I do. Getting closer there, you could even see it. Well, imagine if you put, say, over half of that, or you had one that's like a 4x8 or 2x8. Imagine if you had a 2x2 or something like that, or 4x4. And if you just find an old storm window, and I had a couple that came with this house when I bought it, which I don't even know where they're for. So that the guy must have just either a previous owner must have acquired them, or when they changed out the windows, he kept them. I don't know. Strange things I found here. But that's neither here nor there. Let's just get into this thing.
Here's what's happening.
But if you put a cold frame over top of, that thing, the frost will just, the frost really has to, if you're gardening, the frost really has to kind of touch the plant, touch the leaf. It's like if you put lettuce in a freezer. That's one way of looking at it. You know what would happen to the lettuce, right? But you put lettuce in the refrigerator, nothing really happens to it, and it stays even crunchy. So the coldness doesn't so much. I mean, unless it's bitter cold, below zero cold. But normal freezing, getting close to freezing or in the 30s Fahrenheit isn't going to, kill off your plants, certain plants that are cool. I mean, it'll kill off peppers and zucchini and cucumbers and definitely tomatoes. But not some of the things like cilantro, kale. Kale lasts through the winter, and things of that nature. They call them cool weather crops. They just they can take it, but nothing can take. You don't want anything to get frozen through to where it gets that like condensation, and then it just freezes and all that stuff. But what I wanted to talk about today, like the point of departure, is not the fact that my foot is killing me a little bit, but which basically has made my decision. I was deciding whether or not I was going to walk to the grocery store or not. And I haven't walked in a couple of days, except for messing around in the backyard. So I obviously I'm not going to walk. Why should I? It'd just be
let's get this show on the road.
It'll be a fool's errand, as they say. So I'm organizing my flashcards that I just made this morning, which has made me later. I probably would have started the show at 6, but I didn't. My Louis Armstrong handkerchief, cleaning the mustache off. This show is live, need I remind everyone, and I'm a human being just like you, so nothing gets edited. I mean, I think there might even be some ways in YouTube Studio to edit some of these things after the fact, but I don't know. Yeah, I've still got vanity. Does anybody remember that song? Like, vanity, night and day you torture me. It would have to be something that your parents or grandparents would have played. I mean, that's how I remember. It's either that or one of my early radio jobs. It was like some, it was on some 33 RPM or no, 78. 78. Remember 78s? No. Man. Of course, I had the longest running lounge show on the internet in the 90s. So I've been doing this for a long time. And I mean, I've been broadcasting since I was in high school, been on the radio, the actual radio. And where I live, I'm setting up, I'm actually set up to do it. I don't have it all wired yet, and it's not complicated. But I'm going to broadcast or be set up to broadcast over the air. I don't have like a super antenna. It's called low power. It's legal to broadcast low power, low wattage if you're talking. As long as you're in what's called a clear channel. In fact, that's where Clear Channel, who is the demon that destroyed radio as we know it, the Clear Channel Corporation or whatever. But that's where they got their name from. Clear Channel was that meaning there was no other channel in that area. And so it was a clear channel. And so if you're in an area, if you're on the radio band where there's nothing, and anyone who remembers radio, dials, when you turn that dial, you'd hit a spot and there was nothing, that's clear, anyway, a little bit of blast from the past. A lot of people don't care. I'm wearing the most comfortable shirt I own, and it's the one I kind of held up yesterday a little bit. This is the one You Don't Know What You Don't Know. But it's the most comfortable material you can imagine. It's just like the super comfortable shirt. So anyway, I was talking about like looking at the path, the rows on YouTube, because I don't watch TV as I repeat often. Got rid of it. Can't stand the commercials, the newsreaders or used car salesmen, And by the way, we live in a beautiful world. And despite all the things that, we get into here and certainly the stuff that you're being tortured with.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Is that it's a big planet and it's a beautiful world. And sometimes that beautiful world could be in your own backyard. Yesterday, I had a really nice hour and a half or so in my yard. And you can't really notice it, but actually I got a little bit of some color, as they call it, a little bit of red cheeks or so. The sun, especially when I first came in the house, my face was the sun, you can feel it. It's starting to get hot enough. And I was sitting in my lounge chair for a while. I was listening to some classical music, some piano concerto in stereo between my two outdoor speakers on my lounge chair, and eyes closed, feeling the intensity of the sun in the spot I have back there. If you see my early garden videos, you'll see a spot that's next to a greenhouse, a very small greenhouse. I've called this before. It's the TARDIS. And I'm determined this year that I'm going to paint the door to look like the TARDIS from, the sci-fi show, that British sci-fi show, all about time travel, which was also copied. Bill and Ted, Excellent Adventure. They ended up going through time in like a phone booth type of thing, which was copied from that show, Doctor Who, right? Because that show, if you ever see the original version of Doctor Who, and I laughed about this before, and then he had these things called the Daleks. I actually think I had a picture of one when I was putting other photos up besides nature. And one of one of the arms on on this Dalek thing, it is like a toilet plunger. It's like they rushed the thing together. Oh, we need another arm. Quick, what do we got? Oh, there's a toilet plunger over there in the bathroom. And they never got rid of it. To my knowledge, I haven't watched it in a while. I did get into it a couple of years ago. They had a couple of hot babes, as his assistant. And those women, I guess, went on to try to do other things. Some of them successful, some of them not. Well, there's two things that are going on now. And remember, let's get this out front for all the, those looking for reasons to go against a video or something like that. I'm not political. I just don't, I gave up on that. I was political in a sense. I was outspoken about, certain issues. I allowed myself to get caught up in things. I mean, obviously, a guy who writes a bunch of books thinks he's got something to say. And I did in some of the earlier books, particularly. But by the time we got to this one, this Codex, my latest book, it's just not politics, because politics isn't the answer. Politics is it's a diversion, It's a deception, obviously. And the things politicians do, it's a ruse. And, just like the people in the alphabet agencies, spy agencies, they lie for a living. I mean, it's their nature. And more so, and more importantly, as you know from this program, there really is no government. There really are no politicians. It's just the corporatocracy, the people who pull the strings of the marionettes. And everyone the world over are marionettes. We, in their minds, are cattle on a tax farm or a consumer farm. And when we no longer serve a purpose for them, they put us out to pasture, warehouse the elderly, and take every last bit of money they have and abandon them. What kind of society that is. And today, that's why I wanted to get into some numbers. And the reason I'm giving you this preamble of that this isn't political is because it's the idea that when you're a child, those of us who literally were raised as children. In other words, we had parents that one or the other was a parent to us. We weren't ushered off to daycare. They have infant daycare now. I mean, they've always had these things. The extremely wealthy had nannies and then places where they would do this. But I mean, the average working class, middle class person, we didn't have that. The closest thing to a nanny was somebody's actual nanny or grandmother who would come over and watch the kids if mom and dad had to do something. We had babysitters and things of that nature, but we were, for the most part, my generation, and the generation before it, and the one a little bit after it. We were raised by our parents, and there's no replacement for that. Throwing kids into an institution, when they're a year and a half old, or I mean, some people, it's like once they get off maternity leave, you know, they drop the infant off at toddler. Actually, an infant's not even toddling yet, off to these places that have some sort of, you know, prepared way of doing this, that administrators, bureaucracies have sit and meet, and their psychologists and human behavioral psychologists have come up with, this is the way. And in effect, it's indoctrination. I mean, I don't care what you want to call it. And the school systems, we've talked about this before. There's some places there are more administrators than there are teachers. So children today are basically indoctrinated. And once they're out of the school system, then they get propaganda by the media, and they get that propaganda until they're put back into daycare, but that daycare is replaced by a nursing home or a long-term care facility. And we call that life. That's living, right? It's crazy. So just some odd statistics that I was trying to dig up. Well, I wasn't trying. I actually was successful in doing that. And I want to make sure I have, these numbers. And these are all approximate, rounded out numbers. It's very hard. You could go to the US Census sites. You could go to various government agency sites. And and worst of all, Wikipedia, places like that. But they all there's all contradictions and asterisks under the various numbers. And when they talk about estimates, sometimes the estimates can be off. In fact, I found in my study yesterday that there were things like they would say there are approximately 7 million this, but perhaps 12 million, or the official number is 10 million, but it could be upwards of 20 million. That's unacceptable. You're talking double, so that the numbers can be off. So like I always say, whenever you're researching on the internet, whether it's a pain in your foot like me, or you're trying to find some matter-of-factual number, helping your child or grandchild out in a school project or something of that type. These metal mugs are great. I also was rethinking a lot of this stuff. I know I'm constantly pushing these, talking about my stuff, like my shirts and things like that. It's like, I don't expect anybody to buy them. I don't really care. I don't really want anybody to buy them. And I mean, it's not, just don't take it the wrong way. I'm just having fun. I'm just creating a television. This is a television show, a 21st century television show. That's what YouTube Live is. And, Facebook Live and some of these other live things are. This is what we do today. People, guys like me who are considered broadcasters. Some people just don't do this, but I've been doing it. I've been doing radio shows since I was 16, something like that. And all along the way, I mean, I've had all kinds of different jobs and stuff like that. But so this is just my thing. Somebody's got to do it. There's, somebody's driven to play you the latest hits, or the golden oldies, do this kind of thing. I wish I could do it, but you can't do it. But
The now sound. Another hour of music power.
I mean, I love that stuff, but and I'd love to just do a great, on-air video radio show, right? But like I did last week with the St. Patrick's show, on the third hour, that show's gone, by the way. It had to be taken down. They blocked it. At the end, though, so those who were able to watch those 3 hours of me drinking Guinness half and halves and smoking a cigar, and the last hour I was playing, these classic Irish drinking songs and stuff. If you had a chance, to be there live, it was great. But as soon as the show was over, or not too much long after the show was over, they blocked it because that was copyright infringement or something. Which, like I said then, and I'll say again, because we always get new, it seems the audience here is just constantly like just, recirculating itself or changing. They mustn't be paying their rights, because there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to play music on YouTube. That means they're not paying the royalties. Yeah. Like I have songs on YouTube that are there, and if you play it, like if I play my own song, I'll get a copyright hit. Figure that one out. Something's, as Holmes would say, there's something afoot. First flashcard. Try to keep these in focus the best I can. So I think if I take them close to the screen, it's good. There's approximately, like I say, these are all approximate numbers, and you might find, and the deviations could be, by the million or millions, because it depends on where you look and who you look. And the so-called official sites, even within so-called government agencies, they contradict one another. But there are approximately 75 plus million people, I guess kids, children, young people under the age of 17. Okay? Now keep that number in your mind. So we have, as this flashcard says, not so much the 150 number at the top, but the U.S. population, according the official statistic, is that there are 332 million people in the former United States, as I call it, because we have irreconcilable differences. This is not a united country. Hardly. And allegedly 150 million workers. Okay. So, which I doubt if 150 million people are working right now. However, all these, we'll try to make some sense of these numbers. However, that said, about the 150 million alleged workers, here's a real funny one. 20 million approximately are collecting unemployment. But according to the government, officially, unemployment rate is only 6.3%, which is 10 million. So this is one of those ones I was talking like was double. So in other words, if you hear, a labor secretary or somebody like that come out and say, unemployment is 6.3%, if you watch Bloomberg or something, they're saying 10 million people are unemployed. All right. However, if you go to like the stimulus, dig through the stimulus and see how much money is going out to people collecting unemployment, that's 20 million, or close to 13% unemployment. But how could the official number be off by 10 million people? Right? That's why I show you how crazy and how, why I have that thing, which is faded in the background up there, but it says the other shirt, everything is wrong. Right? And the shirt I'm wearing, which is hard to see again, you got to pull it up. You don't know what you don't know. Yeah. So they try to tell you that there's 6.3 unemployment, which figures lie and liars figure. When somebody uses the way they use percentages is they use them if they're to their advantages. And when they use numbers, they use them to their advantage. An example would be, I want to get sidetracked, but would be with this plague thing. They'll say over 500 million cases or 500 million people died, right? And people go, 500 million people? That's insane, right? But with 330 plus million people, 1% of the population would be 3.3 million. So 500 million, right, would be 3.3. I mean, 3.3 million would be that, but 500,000, I'm sorry, 500 million, forgive me, we only have 332 million in the country. Yeah, a little too early for me. So 3.2 million would be 1%. I'm sorry for confusion. That's why I even have flashcards, because I'm trying to keep, when you talk numbers, it gets crazy, but hang in with me on this. This will all make sense, and I will simplify it, because first you have to throw out a lot of stuff, and then you just kind of let it all come down to the simplistic, the obvious. In a country of, say, 330 million people, all right, and they're claiming officially that there are 332 million people in the United States, former United States. 1%, this is how figures lie and liars figure. People use percentages and or numbers depending on how they want to create fearmonger people. And I'm against fearmongering. I just think we need to cut through and just tell the truth. So what 500,000 people, who die from something, all right, is, if you go, and you have to do some mental math here, but is a percentage, is like a 0.0 of a percentage of the population, right? So out of 3 million, just think about it, 500,000, out of 1 million, that, you get, that goes in 2 times. So out of 3 million, that's, 6 times. All right. So an easier way to do it is to say something to the effect of 300,000 people out of 332 million would be 0.1, would be like 0.1%. Okay. So we're more like, if they would say less than, just a little over, the way it was going for a while was 99 point, I think it was 6% or something like that. 99.6% of the people in the former United States did not die from this thing, right? Now think about that. Or someone said you have a 99.6% or 99.3%, say, chance of not dying from something. 99.3%. I'm just, putting this out. Most people wouldn't go to the decimal point. If someone said to you, you're about to go to the grocery store, and they say, "What? Be careful. If you go out there, there's a 99% chance that you won't, die or, from this thing or whatever." And you might look at that and you would go, you mean, in other words, I have a 99% chance of survival. And depending on your group, like, if you're one of those under 17, like people like this, they have like a 99.9% or more. It's like 99.99 chance. So the idea of a child dying from the plague is like, you see, is if you present it that way. But when you present raw numbers to somebody, and so they don't take in population, they don't take in real numbers. So people, like I said, figures lie and liars figure. They're used to manipulate people. And the reason I made these flashcards, so to speak, I just put some numbers on a page and cut them out, is an attempt for us to, at this show, to try to make some logical sense of this. So, according to the government, there are 10 million people unemployed, but according to the amount of money, the statistics on who's collecting unemployment double that number. 20 million are getting unemployment. And that doesn't include, that's like with undocumented people in the US. Officially, they're saying there's about 7 million, but then there are other statistics that are saying some 12 million, right? So there's like a 5 million discrepancy. I think that number is probably closer to 20 million because they keep using the same thing. It's like years ago, people used to say there was, I couldn't remember how long, right into the mid 2000s, it was like whenever you'd hear, even on a science show, they'd say there's 6 billion people on the planet. All these people that want to depopulate, they always talk about population as being our big problem. And it was guys like me who were looking it up and going, what are you talking about? We're up to 7 billion. Well, now we're approaching like 8 billion people on the planet. And so, again, figures lie and liars figure. Some guy, when I had a job, I took a year off halfway through college. I took a year off and I went to, well, actually I went to the shore. I went to spent the summer down the Jersey Shore and doing a summer job and stuff. And I ran into some guys who were coming in from Cleveland. They were radio guys, but they were publishing some kind of rag, and I was doing that kind of thing, like one of these entertainment type things. If you go down to shore, newspaper, rag, what to do, where. And they were trying to break into the South Jersey, Philadelphia market. And I told this story in detail in one of my earlier videos, but just the abbreviated version is I ran into these guys somehow and I critiqued it, right? And so with like the VP guy. And so he was taken back by that. And so he wanted me to meet his boss. And I met his boss and they ended up like giving me a position. And I was just a kid, because I was just in college of summer. I had all intentions of going back to college. But, they offered me like $20-some thousand, a car and a nice apartment in Philly, Center City, Philly, and all this stuff. And back then that was a lot of money. And I was just a kid and I was like the marketing director or something like that. So I took it. But there used to be one of the guys on the sales staff. I still remember the guy. There's a couple of crazy salespeople. And the one guy used to say, that was his favorite line, figures lie and liars figure. Because when you're doing sales of things like that, it's all statistics. We were trying to move product. The old A&P, we had the in with the old A&P food stores, A&P, the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company. That's what A&P stood for. And he used to say, figures lie and liars figure. But it's true. So 60 million people are on welfare, right? In these former United States. 45 plus million people are retired. And like I said, 12 million people are, as many as 12 million people are undocumented, but it may be 20 million because the numbers, especially with all this activity that we seem to be having right now, right? And there's like crisis at the border type of thing. Like I said, I don't watch the news, but all you have to do is glance anywhere and you see, you know, some kind of thing, right? So it's pretty obvious there's something going on down there. So you got 150 million, basically only half the people in the country supposedly are workers. Now, whether or not they're working or not, or like I said to one of the nurses next door, I said, are you working I said, are you hard at work or are you hardly working? And she said, hardly. But so to begin with, you only have half. And you say, well, does this all jibe, so to speak? Well, if, let's keep that number in mind. All right. Let's let's take the 330 some. All right. And I'm saying 150 is approximately half. Okay. It's obviously 30 million more people, and that could be as high as 350 million people in this country, depending on whether or not this undocumented figure, because they just don't count. People don't want to talk about that stuff. And that's what today's show is about. So if half the people in the country, approximately half the people in the country, and like in 2019, this number was up to about 160 plus or something. So, give or take, technically, let's say half the people in the country are workers. All right. These former United States. All right. 45 million of them are retired. Okay. And they're retiring at like fast pace. And if you're close to retirement age, my recommendation to you is retire. Retire at 62. I just lost two people. They must have been younger folk. I hear the word retirement. I think it's show just for us people over the age of reason. 75 million under 17. And again, that number could be higher. All right. So if you take these two numbers together, all right. So if half the people, excuse me, if half the people are supposedly workers, right, and maybe upwards of another half, I haven't even gotten into this one, 60 million on welfare, but some people on welfare are, retired and whatever. $20 million collecting unemployment. All right. So what do all these numbers mean put together? Well, in reality, it seems to me that we're losing workers in this country. All right. We don't have people with skills to take jobs. And so the 60 million sum and plus, because it's not just the microphone just like totally fell. We don't have 60 million people on welfare. And already 20 million collecting unemployment. Come September, these are people getting the government handout right now. Okay. Some people are getting less, just under what they got. Some people are getting about their salary. And people who were lower wage people, the 400 extra actually puts them, they're actually making more than they would have. It all depends on where that, where your salary fell. I mean, obviously, if you are a high paid individual, 400, when you collect unemployment, it's a big, dip in percentage of what you get. So $400 isn't going to take you up to where you were. But if you were a lower waged person, right? Again, it's figures lie, liars figure. It's an all numbers game. The percentage of reduction you get from the various states, it varies in different states on unemployment, but it's always a reduction. You never get unemployment is not full pay. It's always reduced depending on where you live, what the percentage reduction is. I know when I was on an unemployment at one point, it was a pretty big reduction, to the point where it wasn't livable. And at that point, that particular time, I qualified for food stamps. And, according to someone on chat, Trey, he's saying 40% of your salary. It is. So, if you were making, and like I say, it depends on the wage of the person. If someone's making $500 a week, that's 40% of $500 is, you're hurt, because that's like $1,000 every two, you get paid every 2 weeks. It's $1,000. That means instead of $1,000, you're only getting $400 or $800 a month. And your rent, before I bought this house, my rent was over $800 a month alone. So if that would have been me making that kind of money, I wouldn't even have been able to have paid my rent. But someone making $1,000 a week, or whatever, then that's 400. That's only 400 a week, and so it's the same story. So it all depends. So that 400 doesn't work for the more money you earn, the less that benefit is. When it was 600 last year, that would have been a lot better. But be that as it may, that whole program is supposedly going to end, ends in 6 months, ends in September. And this $1,400 that most of us got is, I'm sure half the people went out and just frivolously spent that. Because that's how people are, Instead of buying something like I'm saying, get yourself one of these power packs, or one of these things, spend a paltry $35 and get yourself a, something you could charge your cell phone if the power goes down and, whatever. Look at these windmills here, on this thing. I got into this on another show. First of all, half of them aren't even working. All right. But second of all, look at that beautiful mountain in the background, and it's destroyed by this windmill farm. Right. And, these things have a limited lifespan. Our energy bills haven't gone down. In fact, in some cases, they've gone up. And, the only way to build them requires an awful lot of fossil fuels, carbon-based fuels, and heavy equipment in order to repair them, right? And once they go, they're like I talk about them being nothing more than they'll be like an old Greek column, a Roman column or something, or a ruin, a an obelisk ruin in Egypt or something. Yeah. It's pathetic. I mean, as opposed to this. And they're putting them in water and off coasts now too. So they're even ruining, beautiful landscapes, seascapes, and all of that. For what? For something that really can't help us. But that's not what today's discussion is about. So 12 million undocumented, maybe as high as 20 million. The government's trying to push it down, pretend it's like maybe 7 million, but they don't. But these numbers have been pushed around for forever. And anyone watching this, check out the chat. There's some stats that just got posted that I don't need to repeat because you can read the chat. Turn your chat on if you're watching this after the fact. And you can do that if you watch YouTube on TV like I do. You just hit the pause button and then toggle up, and you have a choice. And you can also like a video that way. And if chat is on there, you can click a chat thing, or you could also go to the channel and subscribe to the channel. So you should subscribe to this channel. Not that, like I said, I don't care about any of that stuff anymore. I really don't care about any of that stuff anymore. I'm not here. I'm not a mug salesman, It's just part of my shtick. It's a thing. It's like if you're going to do the TV show, be the broadcaster, I might as well do it with all the accoutrement, so to speak. 60 million people on welfare. That number's probably low. These mugs, by the way, as someone asked, are, if you go to TonyCaravanLive.com, there's a link. There's 3 different versions. This is the camper one that's like made of metal. And I've been washing this and scrubbing this, and it's good. And it keeps things cold. But there's a ceramic one, and then there's the classic travel mug too. Not that expensive. But if you've got 60 million people on welfare and 75 million under the age of 17, 45 million people retired, which will probably be 50 million before you know it. Okay? All right. 20 million collecting unemployment. Let's put all these numbers together and add them up. So let's take 20 million. I believe that what I'm trying to get at is I believe there are going to be 50 million people unemployed within the next 18 months in the United States. 50 million. So that means out of this 150 million alleged workers, this number will probably go down to about 100. And most of those jobs are just going to be bureaucrats, government bureaucrat jobs. It's like, the administrators and bureaucrats. Because during this whole, plague, who kept their jobs, right? All the bureaucrats, they're doing their Zoom meetings and all that stuff, but they kept their jobs. All the, government workers, the Wall Streeters, the central bankers, the financial people. And who profited the most out of all of this were companies like Amazon, which brought in record profits. And then people, when they got these payments, they were going, I threw it out because today was garbage day, but at the last couple episodes, I've been holding up the full page ad of a car dealership because I'm calling newspapers and TV stations or just used car salesmen. People went out and last year was a banner year for car sales, particularly used car sales. And I still can't imagine these people that buy a car that has over 100,000 miles on it. That's like 10 or 12 years old, and they pay over 10 grand for it. It's like, I mean, yeah, maybe if it was like a Volvo or there are certain model cars that, get high mileage, or certain trucks that you can get a couple 100,000 miles on without the transmission dropping or having major flaws. But not the common car, the common Ford, Chevy, if it's got 100 some thousand miles on it and it's like 10 or 12 years old, and you're a fool. It's funny. One thing about where I live, because like I said, I have I bought a cheap house. So the cost of living here and the taxes here are very low. Well, there's a garage up the street. I mean, literally like a couple blocks from me. And they fix used cars. I think they go to like the auctions or whatever, get them, fix them up, and then they put them for sale. Now they sell those cars for like $39.95 or something like that. The 95 thing still cracks me up. So $4,000. Now I could see spending $4,000 if I were in the market desperate for a vehicle, especially coming from a garage, a guy who's, probably gave it, a good going over, and who offers like a 90-day or so many miles warranty. But no way. I see these other people selling cars with over 100 some thousand miles for like $12,000 and stuff like that. And all they really did was, give it a good wash and wax, and, maybe the old used car salesman thing, shine up the hubcaps, change the hubcaps out, or put some new tires on it, and give it a good buffing, used car salesman, news readers on TV, newspapers, they're all selling cars. Don't spend your $1,400. If you got any of your money left, don't spend it on that. So what are we going to do? Where's the money going to come from? They just manufacture the 60 million on welfare that might go up to 100 million, right? These children have been in and out of school coming up on, over a year now, just messed up, scared, freaked out, right? Those that have big student loans, that group I didn't mention, the 18 to 45 or 44, used to be a demographic in advertising, was always the 18 to 44 group was a prime demographic, for advertising. Well, those are the people with the high student loans, but who got these degrees that are more or less meaningless. In an age of AI, algorithms, automation, robotics. I mean, I just talked about going to Walmart last week. I use the self-checkout lane. Wherever I go, I see more and more of those self-checkout lanes, popping up. I don't go to places like McDonald's anymore. I haven't done that in a long time, but people who do tell me that they've got, you just swipe your card at a kiosk now, you punch it in, so that's a less employees there. You don't have to go up to the counter and, and order, give me large fries, whatever. You just picture, like the monkey in a cage, type of thing. Picture of the banana. Give me banana. I want banana. And I swipe my card, my EBT card, electronic benefits transfer, right? Which ties into the 60 million on welfare. So I see, no matter which way you look at this thing, it seems to me that we're going to be ending up within 6 months, 18 months at the outset. But within 6 months, we're going to be in a situation where there's going to be such extremely high unemployment people with such debt, you know, cities out of control. This is the dystopia. Crime. Because the thing is, when people are tormented. See, anyone who, you have to understand the torment. I call it tormentia. I used to have a website called that, but I got rid of it years ago. Pardon me. It's a live show. I can't pause it. I could edit it out later, but I'm not going to. Like I said, I'm a human being. Forgive me, please. You know, or just tell me
You're fired.
But so the title of the show was Dystopia or Utopia. And if you look at one particular group of people, and this isn't partisan, that's what I'm saying. You got to forget about political parties. The light's getting really weird here, but it's kind of funky. I have no control over that. I have no idea why these things happen. You know, I'm tired of people talking about political parties, political candidates, like I say, the cult of personality, right? And everything is politics, politics, politics. It's become the pop culture, right? It's just ad nauseum. That's why I got rid of my TV service. Just no interest whatsoever anymore. Because it's not that way. You know, life isn't. This is not how life is. And they're all basically, we live in a corporatocracy anyway. So it's big tech, right? With their big data, big ag, you know, big pharma, you know, all the military contractors, the military industrial complex, whatever you want to call it. And then these crazy, you know, psychopaths, megalomaniacs, psychopaths from the World Economic Forum with this great reset. The old world order wants to bring back feudalism or neo-feudalism, the king system. All right. That's the way the world really is. You know, and the average person is like, what are you talking about? Like I never heard, you know. Yeah, right. You never heard it. Well, why would they tell you? That's that. And media is part of the corporatocracy, you know, and those that aren't part of the corporatocracy, the local network affiliates, they're just selling used cars, you know. They're just out to make money. Everyone you see on TV is very well paid, right? In local markets, they make in the hundreds of thousands, six figures, and on the national scene, they make 7 to 8 figures. You know, so they're not in touch with you or reality or anything. They're just, you know, they just want to keep their jobs and their house in the Hamptons and, you know, all that kind of stuff. You know, it's a different world. So those people aren't affected and won't be. And a lot of people just don't understand that. That's why they don't care. They're just doing their job, so to speak, you know? And, you know, you might say, you know, because who has, you know, it's a matter of ethics, morals and ethics, right? How many people have, you know, have that kind of moral fiber in them that they would actually say, I'm going to quit this $20 million job or this $1.2 million job, this dream life, you know, this dream, you know, family or spouse I have or whatever, because I no longer can stand to, you know, to publish these lies, to, you know, read this teleprompter anymore. Very few. You know, I mean, I think there are some people out there. I do see from time to time, you see these Congress people and, you know, resigning. Now, I don't know if that's their motivation or if their motivation is because they're being blackmailed or something like that too, which is a possibility. But the fact of the matter is, the answer is no. Most people, it's complicated, right? You know, most people, you know, what's that line? Live lives of quiet desperation. I mean, what are you going to do? You know, it's like the single mom, you know, who's raising a kid or two, right? and she's, working in some job where she's being, constantly has some boss hitting on her, or like some weird situation or something like that, and she's thinking, I've got to put food on the table for my kids. And so she puts up with this annoyance, or somebody who has a very long commute, right? And, they hate it, or they hate their job. But it's like they can't quit because, food stamps, welfare, just doesn't cut it, you know. And so, there's that's the thing. And then you have people that are basically, generationally poor, or living in areas where they are paycheck to paycheck, always have been. And then suddenly, like, the wool's pulled out, or the rugs pulled out from under their feet, and now they've never been taught how to, fend for themselves, because it's just, I get back to the idea of the parenting thing, because both parents were working since they were infants, so they don't have that concept of understanding, how to survive and thrive, like I say, because it's not a matter of surviving. What good is surviving if you can't live well, you know? And so that's what I see when I say dystopia versus utopia. You have the people who are making, 6, 7, and 8 figures, and there's lots of them. There's millions and millions of them. That's part of the problem. They don't even need us. At one time we were necessary cattle on their tax and consumer farms. But as the population increased, there were more than enough people to provide them with the things they needed. And then as the technocracy, took over, and we became, and robotics improved, automation, AI, algorithms, and all of that sort of thing, then there was no longer a need for people, period, for workers. That's what's so crazy about the migrant thing that's happening right now, is that I say this often. I say, these poor people are coming from literally places that you would consider paradise, palm trees, beautiful beaches, perfect weather. Yes, they have cartels and gangs and stuff that are there. But like I said, if you watch that movie, Clear and Present Danger with Harrison Ford, you could take out those the problem people down there in a weekend. So these people are coming up here because life is so-called tough, in those parts. But what are they coming into? A former, empire that's fallen. Western civilization's gone. The U.S. has irreconcilable differences. We could see that the country's already split into fragmenting into like these authoritarian states, and and people are like drawn. Everything's like everybody's is like taking sides on things. And like I said, in a divorce type of situation, it's irreconcilable differences. The types of things that people are talking about are not exactly something that a marriage counselor, right, or whatever you would call it, a country counselor, a political counselor, maybe that's the new job, for the year 2022, is to have some kind of ideologue counselor, ideology counselor or something. But it's I jest, because people are they've been like brought up this way, indoctrinated. They just don't see things. It's like my comment on those windmills and stuff. There are certain people that when you say that kind of thing, that is like, that you just went against their dogma. It's too strong, right? A feeling, a belief system. It's like science isn't science anymore. It's scientism. And if you go against, the science guy, right, who's like, is wrong with practically everything he says, but then, that's to that whole crowd, he's 100% right. So when you have that kind of split, that's dystopia, right? You have a breakaway civilization that are the ultra elite, the so-called ruling elite, which is the corporatocracy, the people that pull the strings of all the so-called elected officials, judges, bureaucrats, intel agencies, everyone. All right. Big tech, the technocracy. And then you have everybody else. And so my thing is, throwing up all these numbers and these cards just to show it almost shows how absurd it is, because quite frankly, you can't make any sense of these numbers. These numbers, they're just it's overwhelming. And every time you look at something, it's different. So where do we go from here? So why is it dystopia versus utopia? Well, my belief is, first of all, you got to pull out of, you've got to like erase your mind from any allegiance to any kind of political party. You have to understand that politics is dead. Okay. It doesn't matter. We live in a corporatocracy, a world of a corporatocracy. All right. And that is just the way it is. We're not going back. People who want to go back to the good old days, like that Carly Simon song, these are the good old days. They can be the good old days for you. When you say how could they? What do you mean? How could this be the good old days? Well, it's like I talked a couple of videos ago about making that list, taking a sheet of paper, drawing a line down the center of it, and putting likes and dislikes, or, the good, what's good and what's bad, in my life. And just making those columns, And so you can make changes in your life or evaluate your life. And unless you do that physically, you're not going to really grasp it, because most of those things lie in your subconscious. And so you can say, well, yeah, I hate my job, I hate my commute, or I like this, I like that, I like my house, I like this. It's like, yeah, we all could do that. We all rattle off a few things. But I'm talking about literally sitting down, spending some time doing this, put it on your nightstand, put it on your kitchen table, or put it next to your sofa and your end table, and think about it. And when you get another like, you write it in the like column. When you get another dislike, you like this column. And work at it. Because it's the only way you're going to move forward and find happiness. Because if you don't do anything and you just let this thing play out, you're going to end up in dystopia. You're going to end up in some kind of Mad Max world, because we're beyond the point, these numbers, are showing us that there's no way out, put it that way. There's no way out. The government can keep printing money for a little while and doing this kind of stuff, or creating this cloud-based, blockchain type of it's not even currency, just figures on a ledger, digital currency, whatever you want to call it. And they'll pull everything they can, because they just want to, their idea is self-preservation. And until they could reach a point where they, what happens one day, this is a little sci-fi-ish, but when didn't Bezos recently resign? Didn't he just resign as CEO of Amazon after his banner year? The guy's worth like $60 billion. So I mean, I don't know the man. I don't know what his thought process was. I haven't read anything that he's written necessarily, so I'm just, I'm just guessing. But, I'm just trying to put myself in a situation like that. $60 billion. Okay, is your net worth. Why would you even want to even show up at a board meeting anymore? $60 billion. We're not talking $60 million. I mean, if you had $60 million, okay, you're still like can have an unbelievable life. And he wasn't that young a guy, I don't think. So 60 million would be enough for him to live out a dream life for the rest of his life and still have some little pet projects or do some things here and there, whatever. But when you talk about 60 billion, right? So what would happen if this breakaway civilization, all of these billionaires, because that's what we have now, the Fortune 500 aren't millionaires, they're billionaires, right? Well, what if they just decided to just say, okay, well, the heck with, they're running a tax farm, and that's what this is. This is a tax farm, a consumer farm. The corporatocracy's run. There is no government. If you believe there's a government, you're a fool. If you believe in elections, you're a fool. I'm sorry to call you a fool, but that's the way it is. If you think there's hope to change something in 2022 or 2024, or you're like concerned about them turning DC into a 51st state, which basically is virtually impossible for them to do, actually. It's kind of in the Constitution. I think they had to have an amendment to just even get it that way. The whole idea was that the center of government was supposed to be independent of any state, any political state. So you can't take the so-called central government and make it a state, because in effect, then who's what, right? So you got two senators from DC, then what is the president? Whatever. It's all wacky stuff that's going on. It's just stuff messing with your mind, messing with everything. Politics is over. There's a technocracy. It's a corporatocracy. All right. That's the world we live in. Elections and candidates and even bureaucrats. The funniest thing, and I talk about this from time to time, even these arrogant spy masters, right, in the intel communities and stuff, they don't even realize that they are the corporatocracy is looking at them and saying, you are obsolete and you will soon be obsolete. And so what happens when the corporatocracy just decouples from the former United States, right? What happens then? Then we're just left with what, right? It's like I say, when Rome fell, you ended up with Italy, all right? When, Greece, fell, you ended up with Greece. So, yeah, the U.S., former U.S., right, will exist, certain, the states will be here. And I think we've already seen it. Like, sometimes they don't see the forest for the trees. We're already seeing what's going on in various states. How the governors are becoming more authoritarian, and so that's kind of it's all like kind of playing out right before your eyes, but the media is not covering it, and most people are still caught up. It's like I often say, people are like living like it's the 1980s or the early 1990s, like they don't realize it's the year 2021, right? It's like somehow the last 25, 30 years have just been a blur in their mind. I guess they've been so mesmerized by, the Black Mirror, the smartphone and things of that, and apps and all this kind of stuff, social media, so-called social media. It's hardly social, right? That 25, 30 years has passed by and people aren't even, they don't get it. Things have changed. Things have changed drastically. And those of us who've lived through it, we know that. And so going forward, because that, to end on a positive note, is that you have to decouple. If they're going to eventually decouple themselves from us. All right. It's the breakaway civilization. In other words, it become too much of a hassle. It's like I say with like my theory on Bezos, because I don't know I don't know the guy, so I can't say he did this for this reason. But I've seen people do similar things that I've known. People I've known. So when they as a person decouple, as these technocrats, the corporatocracy no longer needs us, so to speak, the masses. And again, that's why I'm saying this immigration thing is so out of control, because these people don't realize they're coming. This is the wrong time to come to America. It's funny, a Netflix or one of those things, or Amazon Prime, they've got Coming to America 2 or something, that Eddie Murphy movie or remake, or I don't know what the heck it is. But, and that's all like mind games they're playing on people or stuff like that. But it's like, this is the wrong time to come to America. America's like, is collapsing all around us and is transforming into this, various factions, various territories. It's, Western civilization already fell. And there's this, and there's this big money grab going on right now. That's what the media is doing, and it, it's probably why they're putting out all this money right now, is just, get that last big collection, of cash. And then they're going to say, okay, we're a breakaway civilization. The heck with these people. We don't need them anymore. Right? Imagine it this way. When I say that we're cattle on a tax farm, or cattle on a tax/consumer farm, right? Okay, what about, and who's in charge of the farm? The farmer, right? The farmer's family, right? The cattleman, right? So what happens if the farmer just one day got in his truck, right, and just left? Think about that, right? I guess the cattle eventually, they'll eat as much grass as they can in the area that they were fenced into. The bulls will, bang and bang at fences until they can break out, so they could, find more pasture. Because, remember, all any of us need animal, whatever kind of animal you are, human or cow, all we need, food is the essential thing. When people get hungry, they go crazy. All right. You can live without bling bling for a while. Some people are crazed with that, but take away their bling and they'll shoot you or something. Make them hungry, and they revert way back to, they'll shoot you, but they'll, it's an endless spiral down. So the farmer leaves, and that's it. And so, because they don't need us anymore, we're as irrelevant and insignificant as the politicians are to the corporatocracy. And those numbers I showed of employment and these people that went to college and got $50,000 student loans or more or less or whatever, and they majored in some kind of odd, study, right? There's no jobs for them. There's not gonna be any jobs for them. So what are they going to do? They're going to starve because the technocracy is going to want to take care of themselves. They're living in a breakaway civilization. They're living in the future. See, there are people in this world that are living in the year 2021. You go back to the 1960s World's Fairs, or you go look at Stanley Kubrick's 2001 movie, Blade Runner is a better movie to look at I still say that's the best view of where we are already and where we're heading. Forget about the flying cars thing. Everybody got that one wrong. The flying cars thing is just not, was just too bizarre. We're never going to have flying cars. I mean, technically there are some flying cars right now, but I mean, that's never going to be that kind of thing. We're not going to make it that far. But you're going to have a breakaway civilization, which you already have, right? Silicon Valley and this corporatocracy. And the old world order, like I say, the Davos set. Those people are already living lives you have no idea. All right? You think you've got because you bought a $3,000 washer and dryer set, and you've got this house in some suburb, and you got a $60,000 or $80,000 SUV, right? And you got a refrigerator that you can click a button and it shows you what's inside, and they've an app that tells you what, when you're at the grocery store, your refrigerator talks to your app and says, hey, you're out of butter and, low on sour cream. And you think, oh, wow, man, I'm living the good life. This is great. Well, you're no different than the single mom who's working in a diner or something to take care of 2 kids. Because the fact of the matter is, when the technocrats and the corporatocracy decide, like the farmer, I'm getting in my pickup truck and leaving this farm. And the cattle are just, moo, right? And left there. Yeah, they'll break the fence. They'll do what they do and look for other pastures. Some will starve. Some will fight. Some will just randomly, just keep going and traveling. And there'll be cows and walking down city streets. Just like you see sometimes when bears get hungry and there's and bears start going through people's trash and stuff in certain cities and stuff. Well, that's going to be, instead of bears and deer and cows, cattle and sheep and all of that stuff, it's going to be humans are going to be like that. And that's dystopia. But at the same time, there'll be these other people in a breakaway civilization who already are doing it, living in utopia. And they have no reason. They don't care about us. They never cared about us. And maybe the mistake people make is that this idea as if, why would they care about us? The idea that we suddenly think, you ascribe your morals onto Bill Gates, right? Forget it. Their thought process has nothing to do, it doesn't with your life, with, your existence. It's not something they're thinking about. There've been times in my life when I've been like, living the good life in certain areas. I had no idea. I was out of touch with, what anybody else was doing. Why would I? Because if you're living, a certain lifestyle, you're blind to the outside world. It's like being in a relationship or something like that. Suddenly people, you're not taught, how come you're not hanging out with your friends anymore? because you're in a relationship, or how come you're not coming out? It's the same concept, you know. This breakaway civilization, it's happening. It's right before us. The corporatocracy's there. These companies, there will be people at lower echelons, almost like in street thugs and gangs, where they have various degrees of, you've got the dealer on the corner type of person, then you've got the supplier to the dealer, and then you've got the person, that deals with that group, and it works its way up. But finding, even in law enforcement, finding who the real kingpins are and whatever sometimes is they're so elusive. It's, they can never find them. And one of the reasons they can never find them, it's like, I wasn't thinking, it's like the opium trade in Afghanistan. It's like, Afghanistan is the major producer, poppy growers in the world, right? And, I said this one time before, they dropped they call it the Moab, the mother of all bombs. And they dropped one time in the last administration, I guess, to make their point that, like, hey, we've got these things that we can do. And that, like, brought them to the negotiating table, right? Because they, like, they were going like, this guy's liable to, just take us out. But my thing at that time was that, well, you could have had the same effect, but you could have killed two birds with one stone. I would have dropped the Moab on the opium fields and said, okay, end of that. But see, the problem is that it's not just the street level, heroin and fentanyl and all that kind of stuff, but it's big pharma that's also making money off of that. And so who's the real high end drug dealers? Like, who's the real kingpin? Right? Big pharma, right? And who's big pharma? The corporatocracy, the old world order, the Davos set. So, like, the reason, some like people involved in some city where they're trying to deal with a drug problem, right? And they're going from street level to, to middlemen, to upper echelon, to this, to that, to that. They have no idea that up here at the real puppeteers, the corporatocracy, are people meeting in Davos. They're the ruling elite. Big pharma, they're the drug. They're not just selling you those crazy drugs you see advertised on TV to get rid of a rash on your wrist or something that you'll end up dying from, by taking it because you're so, you're vain. Let me tell you, no guy, if you're a girl out there thinking of taking some high risk drug because you're afraid because you got a rash on your arm or, some kind of thing like on your neck or something like that. No guy is like, no real man is going to have a problem with you because you've got rosacea or something weird like that. I mean, if a person is that two-dimensional, that shallow a person, you don't want to be with them anyway. Think about that. I can never understand that when I see those ads. And then you always see the lawyer ads afterwards that people that take that stuff end up having such serious complications, all because they thought, oh, no one's going to love me or I'll never get a date because I've got, a rash, which doesn't spread or, is just part of human nature or something like that. Don't do it. Don't do it. Any of that nonsense, It's like these people that get facelifts and all that other crazy stuff. I mean, using a little bit of Just for Men on your mustache or sideburns or something is one thing. But taking some kind of prescription drug that's going to like end up destroying your life or killing you is something else. You know, real people aren't that shallow, you know. So yeah, that's the story of Dystopia, you know, the farmer who gets in his pickup truck and just leaves the cattle behind, fend for themselves. And it's not going to be pretty. And I see that's where we're going. I see that. I really see that. I see that that's where it's headed. I mean, not to say that there won't be people that that fill the power vacuum, always gets filled by somebody. But all you have to do is look at like a Mad Max movie or something like that to see that type of people that fill those power voids. They're worse than the ones that the news media are pitting against each other. In other words, they're worse than the politicians and they're worse than the corporatocracy. So it's something to think about. So I always say, to get out of this thing for the day is that there's a bunch of scary numbers out there. All right. And people are going to throw more numbers at you and they're going to fudge the numbers and they're going to do all kinds of things to try to make you keep spending money and keep doing things. But their goal is to get out, is to break away. And everything that's going on now, right, is just a diversionary tactic to keep a sense of normalcy while these people can basically get themselves, totally into their breakaway civilization. All right. And the rest is just going to be a wasteland. And just craziness. It's already happening in American cities, but it's not getting covered. They're hiding it from people. And they'll be able to hide it because the media will eventually start falling apart too. Less and less people are watching the media. Media ratings are a joke. People talk about, they say, oh, CNN just beat Fox or Fox beat CNN or MSNBC or ABC in the thing. And I've talked about this many, many times before in my older videos. And this has to do with the numbers game again. Well, in a country of 332 million people, if 1 million people, and that's all CNN and Fox, they a good show, they get like 1 million some viewers. Well, if you have 332 million people in a country and 1 million people are watching it, that's 1/3 of 1% of the population. It's not even 1%. That's 1/3 of 1%. So sometimes like you could take like Fox, MSNBC, and CNN, for example, group them all together, and they're lucky if they're getting 1% of the population of the viewership. You could throw all the major networks together, and sometimes they're lucky if they, it would be like a 10% of the population. Well, what are the other 90 to 99% of people doing? They're just doing stuff, right? Like this stuff people don't realize. And like I say, you have decouple yourself, limit your exposure to the corporatocracy. That's how you find happiness. All right. You could do it. I've done it. I cut my cost by 1/4 and I still live fine. You could do it. But what are other people doing? What are the people who are successfully doing this doing? There's a lot of young people that when I say about 90%, I don't want this to run too long. So I'm talking a little faster now. I want to get through this. Well, what are those 90 to 99% people doing who aren't news junkies, right? Because that's a fact. See, ratings today are very accurate because everything's connected. So you don't need the Nielsen book anymore, even though Nielsen still puts out the book, and I personally have received the book. All right. But the idea is that they know, big data knows what you're watching. I mean, that's why, you have statistics and analytics and things, right? That's why, like I said before, Google knows exactly where I could tell me every address I visited in the past decade, right? It's all being, it's all being recorded and it's in the cloud. It exists. So they know who's watching, where they're from. They know who they are. Pardon me. Talking for 2 hours almost. And so the idea about this is that what are the other 90 to 90? We know that 90 to 99%, somewhere in that range, depending on, on the day, the hour, the day part. That's what they call it in the media when you're selling this stuff. That 90 to 99% of Americans, excuse me, I'm very sorry for that. I'm out of my drink, so I can't soothe my throat, and I've been talking nonstop. 90 to 99% is a fact, are not news junkies, are not watching mainstream media, okay? Are not caught up in this whole thing. So what are those people doing? Think about it. They're playing games. They're gamers. So they're sitting there, and that's what they're doing. Out of these people that, we talk about, wherever the number is, we use these, the 20 million people collecting unemployment right now. What's a good chunk of them and a good chunk of the 75 million under 17 doing? All right. That adds up to almost 100 million people. That's like 1/3 of the United States, right? They're playing games, or they're messing with apps. They're doing stuff like that. They're not watching the news. They're not watching me. They don't want to see some, like, who's that guy with glasses? Like, what's all that? What's this stuff? What's he talking about? The morning show? What kind of, I mean, this is like foreign. This is foreign to people. They don't care. They don't think that scene is beautiful, right? They don't know what that is. To them, the idea of sitting on that, like a rock here, it's hard to put like I said, when you're doing broadcasting, the way the camera works, I see everything backwards. So it's hard to like locate where, when you want to point at something. But it's like, we're sitting right here in the front. Man, I'd love to be sitting there. I'd like to, when I end this broadcast, I'm going right here, right there, and sit just listening to those waves hit off the rocks and look out, right? There's other people go like, what do you, that doesn't mean anything to them, So that's 1/3 of the population right there. They're just caught up in apps and games and weird things like that, right? Then there's the retirees. Then there's another, less than, it's not a full third, right? But it's going to approach it soon. The people that are, it's about half of a third. It's a 1/6, I guess, who are just retired. But that doesn't include people in nursing homes and long-term care facilities or retirement communities. Those three things, So you get retirement community type, you've got the long-term care facility, which is less than a nursing home, right? And then you got people like me that I'm basically retired, just bought a house and just living life. So maybe that is almost 1/3 or approaching 1/3 of the people. And so what's left you have are the people who are still like kind of semi-running society. And most of them are bureaucrats or workers doing things, caught up in this, this crazy, crazy life, from cradle to grave, right? The child's born, it's forced into some kind of infant care facility, right? So the mother could go back to work to pay her rent and bills, is brought up in this indoctrination education system, comes out and gets a job, works 40 to 45 years, retires, and maybe has 10 years. Life expectancy is like 77, 78 in the US now or something like that. And maybe has, and the retirement age now is like 66 and a half, 67 for Social Security. Like if you want to get full Social Security, I advise anyone who could still retire at 62, put that date on your target, so that they have 10 years. Well, let me tell you something. When you're 66 and a half, 67, and you're looking at 10 years, yeah, there's people. I talked to my mom. She's 87 years old. She's living in Florida. And, she's still sharp as a whistle on her brain, but her body's like, she's got more problems, than you want to even think about. So, from being an infant in daycare to retirement age, there's this promise of maybe you've got 10 years or so. But the point is, once you reach that, I tell people this all the time. Once you reach that age, you're vulnerable. Some people luck out. They're lucky, but I wasn't lucky. I mean, I'm fine right now. Knock on wood. But, I ended up a year ago, in the hospital with, having operations, plural, and so, there's certain things that, certain limitations I have. So, the older you get, the less, those are the things you would have hoped that these billionaires and the big pharma would have been doing, or these people working in big tech who are doing all this technocracy, transhumanism things, trying to put electrodes in the brain and stuff like that, turn us into machines in the cloud, instead of like trying to improve, human beings. Instead, they just create pharmaceuticals to keep this physical form going as long as possible, so they could just keep draining more and more, using you as cattle, getting money out of you, getting labor out of you. And so think about that. Your whole life, for many people, is spent in servitude to this corporatocracy, to this, this technocracy. That's no way to live. And so what you have to do, you don't have to do anything, but what I would advise a person to do is to do what I did. I looked at this 5 or 6 years ago and I said, this is absurd. This is crazy. I'm paying a lot of money for rent. I'm paying a lot of money for all these extra things. And and it's causing, and I'm doing, and so I'm working harder. It's hurting my health by doing this, that, the other. I'm going to simplify my life. I'm not going to kill myself over this stuff. So I bought a cheaper house, lower taxes area. I got rid of my cell phone service. Got a Wi-Fi, voice over IP phone. I got rid of my TV service. I have internet service, and I'll tell you the amount of access I have, because I have stuff rigged up to my TV. Maybe I'm a little more technical, savvy, I guess, or something in a sense. But I'll tell you, I have more things to do and watch than I did when my cost of living was 4 to 6 times what it is now. And that doesn't even bring into the idea of peace and tranquility and fun in my backyard, through gardening and just nature and laying in the sun. And I've got my little semi-man cave out there, and my kitchen, instead of I gotta live alone. Instead of having, I said this before to people, instead of having a island, type in the middle of my kitchen. I just put a bar. And, I don't drink as much as I used to or whatever, but I still do, you know. And, occasionally some people come over and it's like, I've got 10,000 songs in my music collection, you know, playlist for any kind of mood you could imagine. And the idea is to survive and thrive and have fun and improve your quality of life. And if you're a slave, if you're cattle on a tax farm, if you're cattle on a consumer farm, if you're a slave to technocracy, the technology through the technocracy, you really got to think about it and you got to take steps. And like I said before, there's a breathing space here. There's maybe 6 to 18 months if we're lucky. Might only be 6 months till the fit hits the shan, so to speak. And at that point, it's going to be too late. It's going to be very hard to do. And that's why I do these things. Like I said, I'm not really, I don't care if you buy my mug or get a t-shirt. If you get a t-shirt, the whole purpose is you don't know what you don't know. It's just to torment people. Everything is wrong. Just let people, wake people up. And as far as all these things and this great solar stuff and these things that I have on, if you go show more, I've got a link to my website and that, that's for your own personal benefit. I don't own those companies or anything. I might get a 50 cents or $1 commission. I don't know if, no, I'm just trying. I'm just saying, hey, I'm living life. I managed to survive. It's, life is good. It can be good. Survive and thrive. Improve the quality of your life, but cut your costs way down and basically limit your exposure to, the corporatocracy. And remember, the world is a beautiful place. And they can't take that away from you, right? Because that's one of their things with this whole Green New Deal in Paris and stuff like that. There's nah, green. What makes all that stuff green? CO2. So don't fall sucker to what's going on right now. There's a lot of craziness. And I mean, who knows, the depth of how they're deceiving, and doing all these crazy things to, make people just not see the truth, as I say. But anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And I'll be here. I'll probably be here mostly every day. I'm usually here.
Good morning.
Have a good morning. If you're in the mid-Atlantic states, we've got some really good weather this week. It doesn't get a little bit cooler until Sunday night or something like that. So we still got, today's only Tuesday, so we still have a couple of great days. Maybe some rain on Thursday. I think there's some storms out west, snowstorms out there. But just if it's a beautiful day, take advantage of a beautiful day. If you're underwater, in the ideas financially and stuff like that, take some time, make some lists, figure it out. You can't change overnight. And sometimes it's as frustrating as hell and it looks like there's no way out. But, I could relate to that and I did it, right? I did it. And that's why I wrote and that's really kind of the motivation for me having written 10 frickin' books. All right. And 50 songs, beat poetry tracks. Some of the stuff's good. Some of the stuff's not. Some of my books are good. Some of them are, are lame. And you're welcome to read them. You're welcome to listen to my music. You listen to it free on Spotify or whatever. You'll say, yeah, that song sucks, but that one's an interesting one. So good luck out there. I'll be here every day. We'll do different things. I don't know if this whole flashcard thing made sense or not, but even if it brought a state of confusion, then it was successful because that's what they're throwing at us. just tons of numbers, tons of crazy things. And it's important to look at it and say, man, it's all crazy. They're crazy. I just want to survive, but I want to thrive. I want to live a good life, and I want to live out the best I can with the life I have left. And that's the way it should be. All right. Cheers. Good morning. Peace. All of that great stuff.